Esther was the kind of woman stories are told about, though not often enough. She wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't the type to parade herself on social media or demand attention wherever she went. Yet, in her silence and in her steady way of living, she carried a weight most people would crumble under. From the moment she married Johnny, life had been a test of patience and faith. Johnny was a man with dreams, yes, but dreams without money are like wings without feathers. They don't always take flight. Still, Esther believed in him. She believed in the fire in his eyes when he talked about building a future, and she believed in the man he was, even when the world didn't. Their early years were nothing to boast about. Rent was a constant worry. Sometimes, they barely had food to last 3 days. There were nights Esther boiled rice and stretched a tiny piece of fish into a meal that could feed both of them and their children. She would smile and say, "Eat, Johnny. You need your strength." Even when she was hungry, she always put her family first. But Esther was no ordinary housewife. She had a mind sharp enough for business and a spirit that refused to give up. She started small, selling provisions in a wooden kiosk at the corner of their street. With time, she added a small poultry farm at the back of their rented compound. When Johnny's job paid late, she was the one who quietly covered school fees and slipped money into his pocket for transport, without making him feel less of a man. Johnny's friends used to tease him. "Ah, Johnny, your wife is the real engine of your household. If not for Esther, you would still be stranded." Johnny would laugh it off and say, "That's why I married her. She is more than gold to me." And for many years, he meant it. Neighbors admired Esther. They would watch her juggle everything, running her businesses, raising the children, cooking, cleaning, and still, she found time to listen when someone knocked on her door with a problem. She was the kind of woman people went to for advice, for a kind word, or even just for encouragement. Her children adored her too. To them, she was not just mummy. She was a teacher, a friend, a protector. When homework was hard, she was patient. When one of them fell ill, she never slept. She would sit by their bedside, pressing cool cloths to their foreheads, praying silently through the night. Esther and Johnny's marriage wasn't perfect, but for 12 years, it was peaceful. Whenever Johnny stumbled, Esther picked him up. Whenever he doubted himself, she reminded him of the man she believed he could become. And slowly, their life began to change. They moved into a better apartment. They could afford more than one meal a day. The children's future seemed secure. But through all of this, Esther remained the same, slim, graceful, focused. She never tried to be anyone else. She didn't believe a woman's worth was measured by her body but by her character, her discipline, and her heart. Unfortunately, the world around them didn't see it that way. It started with whispers. Idle gossip from neighbors, careless jokes from strangers, comments on social media posts Johnny scrolled through late at night. "Ah, Johnny, you enjoy but your wife no get body. Men like us need women with real shape. This slim thing no day sweet. A real man should be with a woman that people will turn and look at twice." At first, Johnny would shake his head. "Rubbish talk," he'd say, throwing his phone aside. But sometimes, late at night, when Esther was asleep, he would scroll again. He would look at photos of women who flaunted their curves and read the comments men left under them. Slowly, almost without knowing it, his heart began to drift. Esther noticed the change. It wasn't dramatic at first. It was in the way Johnny looked distracted when she spoke. In the way he scrolled endlessly on his phone instead of listening to how the children's day went. In the way he suddenly started making jokes about thick women as if to test her reaction. But Esther said nothing. She continued to pour herself into her home and businesses. She continued to believe that Johnny would see through the foolishness of the world's standards. She reminded herself of the man who once called her more than gold. She told herself that their 12 years of love and partnership were stronger than whispers and gossip. Yet, deep inside, a shadow was growing. The story of Esther is not just the story of one woman's strength. It is the story of how a family can be destroyed not by poverty, not by sickness, not even by enemies, but by careless words and shallow desires planted like seeds in the heart of a man. Johnny had no idea that the seeds were already growing roots. He had no idea that the same Esther who carried him through storms would soon be pushed to a decision he never thought possible. And Esther herself did not yet know that her world, the world she had fought so hard to build, was about to be shaken to its core. The house was still standing. The family was still together. But the storm was gathering in the distance. They say words are like seeds. If you plant enough of them, even in the shallowest soil, something will grow. For Johnny, those seeds were planted by strangers, friends, and the endless scroll of his phone screen. It started with banter at the beer parlor. One evening, Johnny sat with 3 of his old friends. The night was warm, music drifted from a nearby speaker, and the smell of grilled meat filled the air. They were laughing about work, about politics, about the usual nonsense men laugh about when the day is done. Then one of them, Chike, leaned back in his chair, pointed his skewer of meat at Johnny, and said, "Johnny, a big no vexo, but how you day manage? Your wife no get anything for back. Me, I no fit-o." The group erupted in laughter. Johnny forced a smile, waving his hand as if to brush it off. "A beg, leave matter," he muttered, sipping his drink. But Chike wasn't done. "No, serious talk. See as women day now, Omo, full package. Big nyash, small waist. Brothers, na enjoyment be that. But you just day manage like say you day secondary school love story." The laughter grew louder, and though Johnny tried to laugh along, the words stung. That night, as he drove home, he found himself replaying Chike's voice. He had never once looked at Esther with such shallow eyes. She was slim, yes, but she was beautiful in her own way. And more than that, she was loyal, hardworking, everything a man could ever want. Yet, the poison was planted. At home, Esther was sitting by the dining table, balancing her account book. She looked up and smiled. "You're late. I kept your food warm." Johnny looked at her and, for the first time in years, compared her to the curvy woman he had seen at the bar earlier that evening. He hated himself for it, but the thought had already entered his mind. The days turned into weeks, and Johnny's phone became his new companion. While Esther woke early to tend to the poultry and prepare the children for school, Johnny scrolled. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, his eyes feasted on women flaunting curves in tight dresses, on men praising them with comments like, "This is the real deal." He began to notice how much society glorified the physical. Music videos blasted on TV, filled with lyrics about big nyash and backside wee day scatterground. Billboards flashed images of curvy models. Even comedians made jokes about slim women being emergency chairs. Everywhere he turned, the world whispered the same message. Slim was not enough. Johnny didn't tell Esther about these thoughts, of course. He still came home, still ate her food, still let her hand him money when he was short. But a distance began to form between them, invisible yet growing. One Saturday afternoon, Johnny and Esther went to a wedding. Esther wore a modest dress, blue and simple, fitting her slim frame gracefully. Johnny thought she looked fine, until he saw the bride's friend, a woman with curves that made heads turn. She walked past, and Johnny caught himself staring. He quickly looked away, but Esther noticed. Later that night, Esther spoke softly while they lay in bed. "Johnny, are you happy with me?" The question startled him. "Why would you ask that? You've been different, quiet. Sometimes I feel like your mind is not here." Johnny sighed. "I'm just thinking about work, Esther. You know how things are." She didn't press further, but in her heart, she felt a shadow creeping in. She prayed it was nothing, prayed that her husband wasn't being swayed by the noise of the world. Johnny's friends didn't help matters. They teased him constantly. "Brothers, you too loyal oh. If me, I for don upgrade since." Johnny, slim wife no day trend again. This 2025, we day move with heavy duty. Each time, Johnny laughed weakly, but their words sank deeper. He began to resent the life he once loved. He began to resent Esther without reason, forgetting her sacrifices, forgetting her loyalty. One night, Johnny scrolled through his phone long after midnight. Esther was asleep beside him, her breathing soft and steady. His eyes landed on a woman's photo, curvy, smiling, her caption bold, Real men know the difference. Johnny's thumb hovered over the like button, then slipped into her inbox. Hello. That single word was the beginning of his undoing. Esther, in her quiet wisdom, sensed something changing. She noticed how Johnny guarded his phone now, how he turned the screen away when she walked into the room, how he smiled at messages he didn't share. She didn't accuse him, didn't nag. Instead, she doubled down on her work and her prayers. She told herself it was just a phase. She told herself the Johnny she knew would not betray her. But society's poison runs deep, and once it takes hold of a weak heart, it is hard to shake off. Johnny began to stay out late. He claimed it was work, but Esther knew better. She smelled perfumes that weren't hers on his shirts. She saw lipstick stains once, faint but undeniable. One evening, when Johnny returned unusually cheerful, Esther looked at him and asked quietly, "Johnny, is there someone else?" His smile froze. What kind of question is that? Esther, you day imagine nonsense. But her heart was heavy. She had no proof, no confrontation, only a wife's intuition. The poison had done its work. Johnny, the man who once praised his slim, hard-working wife as gold, now looked at her with dissatisfaction. He wanted what the world told him was better. And somewhere, in the shadows of his secret chats and midnight meetings, a dangerous path was opening. A path that would lead to betrayal, heartbreak, and destruction. Here, Johnny's harmless flirting becomes something serious. He meets the curvy woman face to face, and temptation turns into betrayal. Johnny never planned to cheat. At least, that's what he told himself in the beginning. A little chat here, a few compliments there. What harm could it do? He wasn't leaving Esther. He wasn't abandoning his family. He was just having fun. But fun is a dangerous word. Fun is how many men step into pits without realizing how deep they are. The woman's name was Vanessa. She was bold, loud, and unapologetic. Her profile pictures left little to the imagination, and her messages came with the kind of confidence Johnny wasn't used to. "Johnny, you day dull. Fine man like you, wasting time with small talks. Why don't we meet?" At first, Johnny hesitated. He thought about Esther, about the years she had stood by him, about his children. But then he remembered Chike's mocking laughter, remembered the countless posts online about real men knowing the difference. And before he could stop himself, he typed, "Okay. Where?" Their first meeting was at a small lounge across town. Vanessa walked in wearing a dress that turned heads immediately. Johnny's throat went dry. She was everything the world said a woman should be: curvy, bold, magnetic. She smiled at him like she had known him all her life and slid into the seat across from him. "You're even finer in person," she said, her voice smooth. Johnny chuckled nervously. "You too." They talked for hours. Or rather, Vanessa talked. She told him about her admirers, about how men chased her, about how she didn't need anyone but chose him because he was different. Johnny listened. Flattered. For the first time in a long time, he felt noticed, not for his struggles, not for his responsibilities, but for himself. And that night, when she leaned across the table and whispered, "You don't need to go home yet," Johnny followed. Esther stayed up that night, waiting. She wasn't the kind of wife to call endlessly, demanding answers. Instead, she sat by the window, watching the streetlight flicker outside. When Johnny finally stumbled in, smelling of alcohol and perfume, she said nothing. She only looked at him, her eyes filled with questions he didn't want to answer. "Work held me," he muttered, avoiding her gaze. Esther simply nodded. "Your food is in the kitchen." He went to bed without eating. From that night on, the line was crossed. Johnny met Vanessa again and again, each time sinking deeper. What began as curiosity turned into an affair. Vanessa knew how to keep him hooked: compliments, flattery, and the thrill of being with someone who wasn't his wife. She fed his ego in ways Esther never tried to. Esther gave him truth, discipline, partnership. Vanessa gave him flattery and escape. But what Johnny didn't realize was that he was changing. He began to come home late more often. He spent money recklessly, buying Vanessa gifts he couldn't afford. Bills began to pile up. Esther covered them quietly, but she noticed the missing money, the unexplained expenses. One evening, she confronted him gently. "Johnny, is everything okay? The children's school fees are due, and the money you promised is not complete." Johnny snapped. "Esther, must you remind me of money every time? Am I not trying?" Esther was stunned. Never before had he spoken to her with such sharpness. She swallowed her pain and walked away. Meanwhile, Vanessa grew bolder. She didn't just want Johnny's attention, she wanted his life. "Why you still day with that slim wife?" she asked one afternoon as they lounged in her apartment. "See me, see Esther. Who better? You day waste your time." Johnny frowned. "Don't talk about her like that." Vanessa laughed, tossing her hair. "Defensive husband. But tell me true, if not for children, you for still day with her?" Johnny didn't answer. But the silence spoke louder than words. At home, Esther began to feel the cracks widening. She noticed how he avoided her touch. She noticed how he smiled at his phone but frowned at her. She noticed how he defended late nights with weak excuses. One night, she tried again. As they lay in bed, she turned to him and whispered, "Johnny, whatever it is, we can face it together. Just talk to me." He rolled away from her. "Esther, let me sleep." She lay awake until dawn, tears soaking her pillow. The affair continued for months, until one evening, Johnny came home with news that shattered everything. He stood by the doorway, unable to look her in the eye. Esther, who was stirring soup in the kitchen, turned to him and asked, "What is it?" Johnny cleared his throat. "Vanessa, she's pregnant." The spoon dropped from Esther's hand, clattering against the pot. For a long moment, there was only silence, the kind of silence that carries 1,000 unspoken words. Esther stared at him, her eyes wide, her face pale. "Pregnant," she whispered. Johnny nodded, shame written all over his face. She sank into a chair, her body trembling. For 12 years, she had given him everything, her youth, her strength, her loyalty. And this was what she got in return. Johnny expected a storm. He expected screaming, plates flying, curses hurled. But Esther surprised him. She stood slowly, wiped her hands on her wrapper, and said in a voice colder than ice, "I see. Eat your food if you want. I've lost my appetite." Then she walked into the bedroom and closed the door. That night, she didn't cry where he could see her. She cried into her pillow, quietly, so the children wouldn't wake. She cried not just for herself but for the family she had tried so hard to protect. The next morning, Esther rose early as always. She prepared the children for school, packed their lunches, and sent them off with a smile. But inside, she was breaking. Johnny tried to act normal, sitting at the table with his phone. Esther placed his breakfast before him without a word. He cleared his throat. "Esther, I didn't plan it." She looked at him, her eyes empty. "You didn't plan it, but you chose it. That's enough." He had no reply. The line had been crossed, and there was no going back. Johnny was entangled with Vanessa, and Esther knew her marriage was hanging by a thread. But what Johnny didn't realize was that Esther was stronger than he thought. She would not remain in the shadows of betrayal forever. The storm had arrived. 4 days after Johnny's confession, the house felt like a graveyard. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the children's laughter or the clatter of pots in the kitchen. Esther moved like a shadow, doing her duties, managing the businesses, caring for the children, but inside, something had shifted. She no longer looked at Johnny the same way. The man she once admired, the man she once called her partner, now looked like a stranger. Each time she set food before him, she wondered if he was eating in another woman's house too. Each time she saw him smile at his phone, she wondered if Vanessa was on the other end, controlling his heart with just a few words. At night, she lay awake, her mind racing. What did I do wrong? Was it my fault? Was being slim a crime? She replayed their years together, the struggles, the sacrifices, the dreams. She remembered how she once sold her wedding jewelry to pay rent when Johnny lost his job. She remembered waking up at dawn to fry puff-puff so they could have money for the children's school fees. She remembered covering his shame so the world would not see his weakness. And now, after 12 years of loyalty, he had chosen another woman. Not just chosen, but planted a child in her womb. Esther wept quietly, but she did not weep for long. She was not the kind of woman to drown in sorrow. She was the kind of woman who knew when to endure and when to walk away. One Friday morning, as the children left for school, Esther sat alone in the living room. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting golden stripes across the floor. She stared at the furniture, at the TV, at the neatly arranged shelves, all the things she had worked hard to provide. Almost everything in that house had come from her sweat. Slowly, an idea formed in her mind. That evening, when Johnny returned home, she served his meal and went into the bedroom without a word. He barely noticed. He was too busy scrolling through his phone, laughing at messages from Vanessa. But while he was distracted, Esther began to pack. One by one, she folded clothes into suitcases. One by one, she removed her jewelry, her important documents, her business account records. She moved with the precision of someone who had made up her mind. Her heart pounded, but her face remained calm. When midnight came and Johnny finally fell asleep, Esther moved quietly from room to room. She unplugged the blender she bought. She wrapped the cooking pots she bought. She folded the curtains she had chosen with love. Almost everything in that house bore her mark. And she was taking it back. The next morning, Johnny woke to an eerie silence. He stretched, yawned, and reached for his phone. Vanessa's messages made him smile. He called out, "Esther, my tea." No answer. He frowned. "Esther?" Still silence. Johnny got out of bed and stepped into the living room, and froze. The house was almost empty. The chairs were gone. The curtains were gone. The shelves stood bare. Even the pots in the kitchen were gone. Only a few scattered items remained, things he himself had brought into the marriage. His chest tightened. "Esther," he shouted again, though he already knew the answer. He rushed into the children's room. Empty. Their clothes, their books, their toys, gone. Panic set in. He grabbed his phone and dialed her number. It rang once, then went dead. He dialed again and again, but each time, the call ended. Johnny collapsed into the single chair left in the corner of the living room. His head spun. His hands shook. For the first time in 12 years, he realized what life without Esther looked like, empty, silent, broken. Meanwhile, Esther was miles away, in a safe place with her children. She didn't leave with noise or drama. She didn't leave with accusations or curses. She left with quiet dignity, taking back what was hers. Her children looked at her with confusion. "Mummy, why are we leaving Daddy?" the youngest asked. Esther knelt before them, holding their small hands. Her voice trembled, but her resolve was firm. "Because sometimes, my darlings, love is not enough when respect is gone. And your mummy cannot stay where she is not valued." The children nodded, not fully understanding, but trusting their mother. Back in his empty house, Johnny tried to convince himself she would return. He told himself she was only trying to scare him, that she would crawl back when she realized life was hard outside. But deep inside, he knew Esther was not that kind of woman. She had endured too much already. She had carried him for too long. And so, Johnny sat in his empty house, his phone buzzing with Vanessa's messages, and wondered if he had just lost the best thing that ever happened to him. The days that followed were chaos. Esther built a new routine with her children. She poured herself into her businesses, refusing to let pain destroy her. Friends called, shocked at her boldness. Some praised her courage. Others whispered, "How can a woman leave her husband because of another woman?" But Esther didn't care. For the first time in 12 years, she was free from betrayal. She was free from carrying a man who no longer valued her. As for Johnny, he leaned on Vanessa. He told himself he still had a woman by his side. But soon, he would discover that not all women are the same. Not every woman has the patience, the loyalty, the strength of an Esther. And by the time he realized it, it would be too late. Johnny sat alone in the half-empty house for 2 days after Esther left. He didn't eat much. He didn't sleep well. He tried calling her again and again, but her number stayed unreachable. The silence was unbearable. Every corner of the house reminded him of her, her laughter, her steady footsteps, the sound of her voice calling the children's names. But pride is a stubborn companion. Instead of admitting his mistake, Johnny told himself, "She will come back. She cannot survive without me." He clung to that belief, ignoring the reality that Esther had always been the one carrying the family. On the third day, Vanessa arrived, dragging a suitcase behind her. She looked around the house and scoffed. "So this is where you live? Small, but manageable. We can change it, sure." Johnny forced a smile. "Yes, we'll make it better." Vanessa dropped her bag on the floor and flopped onto the couch. "Johnny, I hope you know I don't like stress. I can't be doing all those village wife duties, cooking, cleaning, all that. Abeg, that's not my style. You better get someone to handle that." Johnny laughed nervously, trying to dismiss her words. But a small knot of unease formed in his chest. At first, the novelty distracted him. Vanessa's boldness, her curves, the way she laughed loudly without a care, it was different from Esther's calm and composed manner. For a few weeks, Johnny convinced himself he had made the right choice. He told himself that this was the life he deserved, young, exciting, modern. But excitement cannot replace stability. One morning, Johnny woke up late for work. Esther used to wake him with tea, his shirt ironed and his shoes polished. But Vanessa was still snoring, her hair wrapped in a scarf. When he asked, "Vanessa, can you at least iron my shirt?" she replied without opening her eyes, "Johnny, abeg iron it yourself. Do I look like a housemaid?" Johnny frowned, but he said nothing. He ironed his own shirt, rushed out late, and faced his boss's anger at work. That evening, when he returned tired and hungry, Vanessa was on the couch watching TV. "What's for dinner?" he asked. She didn't look up. "Johnny, I don't know how to cook like your Esther. You better buy us something." He swallowed his frustration and went out to buy food. Days turned into weeks, and Johnny began to notice more. Vanessa loved enjoyment. She wanted new clothes, new shoes, outings to expensive restaurants. Each time he got his salary, she already had a list of demands waiting. "Baby, I saw one bag in the boutique today. Only 50,000. Buy it for me." "Johnny, I need hair money. This wig costs 75,000. You want me to look like a village girl?" Johnny tried to meet her demands at first, but his pockets grew dry. Bills went unpaid. Rent fell behind. The poultry business Esther once managed was gone because Vanessa had no interest in it. The house that once ran smoothly now felt like a sinking ship. Meanwhile, the children were with Esther, thriving in her care. Johnny barely visited them. Shame held him back. Each time he thought of facing Esther, he remembered the look in her eyes when he confessed the pregnancy. That cold, disappointed stare haunted him. Neighbors began to whisper, "Johnny's house is not the same since Esther left. Vanessa no be wife material at all. That woman just day eat his money. Imagine leaving Esther, that strong woman, for this one." Johnny heard the whispers, and though he acted like they didn't matter, they cut deep. One evening, he returned home to find the house in chaos. Clothes littered the floor, dishes piled up in the sink, and Vanessa was on a video call with her friends, laughing loudly. "Vanessa, what is all this?" he asked, his voice tight. She rolled her eyes. "Johnny, don't stress me. If you don't like it, hire a cleaner." He clenched his fists. "Do you think marriage is only enjoyment? Do you think a home runs itself?" She scoffed. "Abeg, Johnny, stop comparing me to that Esther. If you miss her so much, go back to her." The words hit him like a slap. He stormed out of the house, pacing the street in anger. But when he cooled down, he realized something terrifying. Vanessa was right. He did miss Esther. Every single day. The differences between them grew clearer with time. When money was short, Esther found a way to multiply it. Vanessa only complained when problems arose. Esther faced them calmly. Vanessa shouted, cursed, and blamed when he was sick. Esther stayed by his side all night. Vanessa didn't even notice when he coughed. Johnny began to see the truth he had ignored. Curves could never build a home. Quarrels became their new routine. "Vanessa, where is the money I kept on the table?" Which money? I used it for data. Data? That was for the children's upkeep. Johnny, Abig, don't shout at me. I'm not your slave. Another night, Johnny asked, why don't you respect me? Vanessa laughed in his face. Respect. Respect is earned. Provide first, then we'll talk about respect. His blood boiled, but what could he do? He had chosen this life. By the 8th month of living together, Johnny was exhausted. He dragged himself home every evening, dreading what awaited him. The house was no longer a home. It was a battlefield. He thought back to Esther often, her quiet strength, her gentle touch, her ability to create peace even in storms. Now, there was no peace. Only noise, demands, and regret. One rainy night, Johnny sat alone in the living room after yet another quarrel. Vanessa had stormed out hours earlier, slamming the door behind her. The rain drummed against the roof, and for the first time, Johnny allowed himself to admit the truth. He had lost everything. He had lost Esther, the woman who built him up, who covered his shame, who carried his family on her back. He had lost his children's laughter in his home. He had lost his peace. And all he had gained was regret. At first, Johnny told himself things would get better. He thought Vanessa just needed time to adjust, to learn how to be a wife. But as the months rolled by, it became painfully clear, Vanessa was not changing. If anything, she was getting worse. Every day brought a new quarrel. It started with little things. The bed unmade. Dirty dishes piled in the sink. Food money vanishing without explanation. But small issues grew into big storms. Vanessa, why haven't you cooked? I just came back from work hungry. Johnny, I'm tired. You think I'm Esther? If you want food, go and buy. Another day. Vanessa, the rent is due next week. Where is the money I gave you to keep? Ah, Johnny, I used it. I needed new hair. Do you want me to look like a poor woman? Johnny's voice would rise. Vanessa's voice would rise higher. Soon, the whole compound would hear them screaming. Neighbors shook their heads. See, Johnny. When Esther was here, that house was heaven. Now, every day, fight. The cracks in Johnny's life spread fast. Esther had once managed their finances with skill. She budgeted, she saved, she stretched small money into big results. But Vanessa had no such discipline. The moment money entered Johnny's hands, she found ways to spend it. Baby, my friends are planning a trip. I need cash. Vanessa, we can't afford that now. You can't afford, so why did you marry me? I deserve enjoyment. Johnny's chest burned with anger. He had traded a queen for a woman who thought only of herself. By the 10th month of living with Vanessa, the house looked like a stranger's home. The curtains Esther had chosen with care were gone. The furniture she had bought was gone. Vanessa had sold some things, replaced others with cheap items, and left the rest in chaos. One Saturday morning, Johnny tried to clean the living room. He picked up wrappers, folded blankets, wiped dust from the shelves. As he worked, Vanessa walked in, yawning. Johnny, what are you doing? Cleaning, he muttered. She burst into laughter. See, Johnny, oh. From husband to houseboy. Esther really trained you well. The words cut deep. He dropped the rag and stormed out, his fists clenched. The fights were no longer private. One evening, Johnny and Vanessa's voices shook the walls. I gave you money this morning. Where is it now? Johnny shouted. I used it. Vanessa screamed back. For what? For myself. Do I need to explain every little thing? You think you're my father? Their neighbor, Mama Kimi, clucked her tongue from outside. This is shameful. When Esther was here, we never heard noise from that house. Johnny overheard and felt his face burn with humiliation. Alling performance. Johnny, is everything okay at home? Even at work, his troubles followed him. His boss noticed his lateness, his distraction, his F. Johnny forced a smile. Yes, sir. But in truth, nothing was okay. He was drowning. The final blow came one night after another heated quarrel. Vanessa had stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. Johnny sat alone, his hands shaking. He thought of his children, sleeping peacefully in Esther's care. He thought of Esther's calm face, her patience, her way of making the house feel like home no matter how little they had. Now, the house was filled with noise, with bitterness, with shame. Johnny buried his face in his hands and whispered, "What have I done?" But the trouble was far from over. The next week, Vanessa disappeared for 2 days. No calls, no texts. Johnny panicked, imagining the worst. When she finally returned, she was smiling, carrying shopping bags. "Vanessa, where have you been?" he roared. She rolled her eyes. "Johnny, calm down. I went to stay with my friend. You were stressing me." 2 days, Vanessa. No word. "Do you think marriage is a joke?" She smirked. "If you don't like it, leave. You're not the only man in this world." The words pierced Johnny's chest like knives. For the first time, he realized the bitter truth. Vanessa didn't love him. She never did. She only loved what she could get from him. And so, paradise turned into a battlefield. Johnny lay awake at night, the weight of regret pressing on him. He remembered how Esther used to place a blanket over him when he fell asleep on the couch. He remembered how she used to whisper prayers over their children. He remembered how she used to smile at him, even after a long, exhausting day. Now, there was none of that. Only noise. Only fights. Only emptiness. The paradise Johnny thought he had chosen was nothing but trouble, and deep inside, he knew he had destroyed his own life. It is said that you don't know the value of water until the well runs dry. For Johnny, Esther became a ghost, not because she had died, but because her absence filled every corner of his life. Everywhere he looked, she was there. When he opened the wardrobe, he remembered how neatly she used to fold his shirts, always arranging them by color. Now, clothes were crumpled in a heap, smelling of dust and neglect. When he sat at the dining table, he remembered how Esther would set the plates, steaming food ready before he even asked. Now, the table was bare, Vanessa sprawled on the couch scrolling her phone, waiting for him to order food from a restaurant. When he lay in bed, he remembered how Esther whispered prayers at night, asking God to bless him, to bless their children, to protect their home. Now, Vanessa snored loudly, sometimes kicking him in her sleep, while the room reeked of leftover perfume and hair products. Johnny could not escape her ghost. One Sunday morning, Johnny decided to go to church. Esther had always been the one to push for it. She made sure the children were dressed, Bibles in hand, arriving early enough to sit near the front. Without her, he had stopped going. That day, sitting alone in the pew, he felt the stares of others. Some whispered, "That's Johnny. His wife left him for that other woman." Others shook their heads in pity. The pastor's sermon cut deep. "Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, and gave himself for it." Johnny swallowed hard, guilt twisting his stomach. He could almost see Esther sitting beside him, nodding at the message, her face glowing with quiet faith. Tears stung his eyes. He bowed his head, ashamed. Even his children reminded him of her. On the rare occasions he visited, they clung to Esther, not him. When he tried to carry his youngest, the child whimpered and reached for her mother. "Daddy, why don't you live with us anymore?" one of them asked. Johnny's throat tightened. He forced a smile. "Daddy is busy. But I love you." They nodded, distracted, before running back to Esther. Johnny watched, hollow inside. He knew they felt the shift. They knew their father was no longer the man their mother had trusted. Neighbors didn't make it easier. Mema Kimi, the elderly woman who lived across the street, stopped him one evening. "Johnny, my son," she said, shaking her head. "You see how your life turned now? That Esther, God bless her. She was a real wife. Patient, humble, hardworking. You think women like her grow on trees? No. They are rare. And you threw her away like rubbish." Johnny couldn't answer. Shame burned his cheeks. At work, his colleagues whispered too. One of them, Musa, pulled him aside. "Johnny, let me talk to you man to man. Everybody knows what happened. You left your wife for that new woman. But look at you now, late every day, tired, distracted. Is it worth it?" Johnny forced a laugh. "Musa, I beg leave matter. But Musa's words echoed in his mind all day. The ghost of Esther haunted his finances too. Bills piled up. Esther had always known how to juggle them, how to make sure no one knocked at their door. But with Vanessa, money vanished like water poured on sand. One evening, the landlord came banging. "Johnny, where is my rent? You are 3 months behind." Johnny stammered, "Sir, please give me 1 more week." The landlord's eyes narrowed. "1 more week? I gave you 3 already. If Esther was here, this would not happen. That woman respected herself. But you're following women and forgetting your home." The words struck like a whip. Even his landlord compared him to Esther. At night, when the quarrels with Vanessa ended and the silence returned, Johnny lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He remembered the day Esther had packed her things. The coldness in her eyes. The calm finality of her voice. "You didn't plan it, but you chose it. That's enough." Those words played over and over in his head. Vanessa noticed his distraction. "Johnny, why you always moody? You don't smile anymore. Are you thinking of that slim woman again?" Johnny clenched his jaw. "Don't call her that." Vanessa sneered. "Why not? She left you. And here you are, still crying over her. If she was so good, why didn't she stay?" He exploded. "Because I betrayed her. Because I was stupid. Because I listened to nonsense." Vanessa flinched, shocked at his outburst. But Johnny didn't care. The words had escaped his chest like a flood, and he felt both relief and pain. The ghost of Esther was everywhere, her absence louder than her presence had ever been. Johnny thought about the countless times she had rescued him. The time she sold her jewelry, the time she woke early to fry puff-puff, the time she stood between him and shame. She had never complained, never demanded more than what he could give. And he had thrown it all away. One evening, after another quarrel, Johnny sat alone in the living room, staring at a framed photo of him and Esther from their early years. They were smiling, holding hands, their faces full of hope. His chest tightened, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Esther, I'm sorry," he whispered to the empty room. "But ghosts don't answer. Greed is a fire. At first, it looks like a small flame, warm, exciting, tempting. But if you feed it, it grows into an inferno that consumes everything in its path." For Johnny, greed had consumed his marriage, his peace, his children's love, and now, even the false paradise he thought he had found with Vanessa. The fights with Vanessa grew worse. What used to be arguments over food or money turned into screaming matches about respect, trust, and freedom. "You don't control me, Johnny," Vanessa shouted one night, her voice echoing through the compound. "And you don't respect me," Johnny fired back. "Respect? For what? You can't even provide like a real man." Neighbors gathered outside, shaking their heads. "This man really threw away Esther for this noise," one whispered. Johnny heard them. The shame burned his ears. The money problems became unbearable. Esther had once turned a little into plenty. Vanessa turned plenty into nothing. Johnny tried to save, but each time his salary came in, Vanessa had already planned how to spend it. "Baby, I need a new phone." "Vanessa, this one is still working." "Working? Please, it's outdated. What will people say if I carry this nonsense?" He sighed, handing her the money meant for bills. A week later, the landlord was banging on the door again. "Johnny, if you don't pay by Friday, I will lock this house." Johnny's head spun. He had never been this low, not even in the days of hardship with Esther. Back then, she found ways to soften every blow. Now, there was no safety net. One evening, Johnny returned from work to find Vanessa dressed up, makeup flawless, perfume strong. "Where are you going?" he asked. She smirked. "Out with friends." "At this time?" "Yes." "Do I need your permission?" Johnny's blood boiled. "You're my wife. You should respect me." Vanessa laughed in his face. "Wife? Johnny, Abeg, don't deceive yourself. I didn't marry you to become your housemaid. If you can't handle me, maybe you should go back to your Esther." The name stung like acid. He shouted, "Don't mention her name again." But Vanessa only smiled, grabbed her purse, and walked out. Days later, she vanished again. This time, it was longer, 3 days, then 4. Johnny called her phone, she ignored him. On the 5th day, she returned, dragging shopping bags. "Vanessa, where have you been?" he roared. She shrugged. "With friends." "Why are you shouting? You're not my father. I'm your husband." She sneered. "And so? Do you think I need you to survive?" "Johnny, let me tell you the truth, you're lucky I even stayed this long." The words hit him like bullets. He realized then what he had refused to see: Vanessa never loved him. She loved the gifts, the money, the attention. But when the money dried up, when the chaos became too much, she had no reason to stay. The breaking point came one rainy night. Johnny came home soaked, his shoes muddy, his shirt sticking to his skin. He expected at least a warm meal, maybe a kind word. Instead, he found the house dark. Vanessa's clothes were gone. Her perfumes, her wigs, her bags, gone. On the table lay a single note. "Johnny, I can't do this anymore. You don't give me the life I want. Don't look for me." His knees buckled. He sank into the chair, the paper trembling in his hands. His chest heaved as the rain pounded the roof, each drop echoing his regret. Vanessa was gone. For hours, he sat in silence. His mind replayed every step that had brought him here. The laughter of friends who mocked his slim wife, the whispers of social media glorifying curves, the late-night chats that turned into betrayal, the coldness in Esther's eyes when he confessed, the empty house when she left, the chaos with Vanessa. And now, nothing. The woman he abandoned was thriving with their children. The woman he chose had deserted him. Neighbors shook their heads when they saw him the next morning, sitting on the porch with swollen eyes. "Johnny, you see your life," Mama Kimi said, her voice heavy with pity. "You left gold for dust. You threw away a woman who built you, for one who destroyed you. This is the consequence of greed." Johnny couldn't argue. He bowed his head, tears rolling down his cheeks. At work, his colleagues noticed the change. Musa pulled him aside again. "Johnny, I warned you. Now look. No wife, no peace, no respect. What will you do now?" Johnny shook his head, his voice breaking. "I don't know. I don't know." At night, the house was unbearably empty. No Esther. No children. No Vanessa. Just silence, echoing his mistakes. He walked through the rooms, touching the bare walls, remembering Esther's laughter, her steady hands, her faith. He whispered into the darkness, "Esther, I'm sorry. I was blind." But apologies could not turn back time. Greed had promised him excitement. Greed had promised him pleasure. But greed had stripped him of everything that truly mattered. Now, Johnny was alone, haunted by memories, mocked by neighbors, abandoned by the very woman he thought was better. The consequences of greed had finally caught up with him. When Esther walked away from Johnny, many people thought she would crumble. They thought she would struggle without him, that she would regret leaving. But Esther was not the kind of woman who looked backward. She had carried Johnny for 12 years, through hunger, through shame, through ridicule. She had given her all and received betrayal in return. Now, she poured everything she had left into herself and her children. The first few weeks were not easy. The children asked questions. "Mummy, will Daddy come back? Mummy, why don't we live in the old house anymore?" Esther sat them down, her voice calm and steady. "Daddy made choices that hurt us. But we are safe now. And I will make sure you never lack." The children nodded, not fully understanding, but trusting her words. They had always seen her as their anchor, and now, more than ever, she proved it. Esther threw herself into her businesses. The poultry farm, once neglected when Johnny followed Vanessa, she revived with fresh energy. She expanded her provision shop, adding new products, attracting more customers. Her neighbors admired her resilience. "Ah, Esther, you are truly a strong woman," they said. She only smiled humbly. "I do it for my children." Within months, her finances stabilized. The house she rented was small but peaceful. Bills were paid on time. The children's school fees were never delayed. Food was always on the table. Esther had turned her pain into power. She also found time for herself.
For years, she had put Johnny first, his needs, his pride, his failures. Now, she began to invest in her own growth. She attended business seminars. She joined a women's cooperative. She even started saving toward owning her own property. At night, after the children were asleep, she would sit by the window with her Bible, reading, praying, drawing strength from God. Lord, she whispered, I did all I could. I will not look back. Give me the grace to move forward. And slowly, her heart healed. Meanwhile, Johnny's life spiraled downward. Without Esther, he struggled to keep up. His house remained in chaos after Vanessa left. His reputation suffered. His finances collapsed. From a distance, Esther heard whispers of his troubles, but she didn't gloat. She didn't rejoice in his downfall. Instead, she focused on her children and the future she was building. Don't speak ill of your father, she reminded them gently whenever they complained. Respect him, even if he has failed. But remember, your life will not be like this. You will rise higher. Her words planted hope in their young hearts. One afternoon, Esther attended a community women's meeting. As she shared her experiences of running multiple businesses, the other women listened with admiration. You should start teaching us, Esther, one said. You have wisdom. You can help other women grow. Esther smiled. For the first time in years, she felt more than a wife or mother. She felt like a leader, someone with a voice that could inspire others. Even her children noticed the change. Mummy, you smile more now, her eldest daughter said one evening. Esther chuckled softly. Yes, my dear. Sometimes, leaving pain behind gives you freedom. They all hugged her tightly, their small arms wrapping around her waist. In that moment, Esther realized she had gained more than she had lost. But the contrast with Johnny could not be ignored. One day, he appeared at the children's school to see them. His clothes were rumpled, his face tired, his eyes hollow. When the children ran to him, Esther stood at a distance, watching. He looked at her briefly, shame filling his eyes. She gave him a polite nod but said nothing. Later, the children asked, Mummy, why does Daddy look sad? Esther's heart ached, but she chose her words carefully. Because sometimes, when people don't value what they have, they lose it. And losing peace makes the heart heavy. Her strength grew not only from survival but from her choice to forgive. Yes, Johnny had broken her heart. Yes, he had betrayed her. But Esther refused to let bitterness poison her. She didn't speak curses over him. She didn't plot revenge. Instead, she let his absence teach her the value of her own worth. She told herself, I was not left behind. I stepped forward. By the 12th month of her new life, Esther had achieved what many thought impossible. She was thriving. Her businesses doubled in profit. Her children were healthier and happier. And her heart, though scarred, was stronger than ever. People in the community pointed to her as an example. If Esther can stand after all she went through, then any woman can. But in Johnny's world, the story was different. Alone in his empty house, he heard about Esther's success. Each word was like salt on an open wound. She's doing well. Her children look so happy. Her business is growing. The ghost of Esther haunted him still, but now, it wasn't only her memory. It was her strength, her progress, her life without him. And so, while Johnny's world crumbled, Esther's world blossomed. The woman once mocked for being slim, the woman once betrayed for not having big curves, had proven that true beauty was in character, wisdom, and resilience. Esther had turned her pain into power, her betrayal into strength. And this was only the beginning. The house where Johnny once lived with Esther was no longer a home. It was a shell, filled with echoes of laughter that no longer existed. The walls seemed to mock him, the silence screamed louder than any quarrel with Vanessa ever had. Sometimes he sat on the porch, staring at the street, watching neighbors pass by. Some looked at him with pity, others with contempt. They all knew the story. They all knew how he had destroyed his own life. Johnny thought of Esther every day. She was no longer a ghost. She was a presence that lived in his memories, in his mistakes, in his regrets. He remembered the nights she stayed awake with sick children. He remembered the mornings she handed him money quietly, so his pride wouldn't break. He remembered her laughter, soft and genuine. He remembered her words, "You didn't plan it, but you chose it." That's enough. Those words replayed in his mind over and over, tormenting him. Meanwhile, Esther was thriving. She had become a symbol of strength in the community. Women looked up to her, admiring her resilience. Men who once mocked her slim figure now respected her as a woman of wisdom and strength. Her children blossomed under her care. They excelled in school, growing into confident young souls. They were proud of their mother, even when whispers of their father's disgrace reached their ears. One evening, after a long day of business, Esther sat on her veranda with her children. They laughed as they ate roasted corn, the simple joy of family surrounding them. A neighbor walked past and said, "Esther, you are blessed. Truly blessed." She smiled, her heart peaceful. Yes, God has been faithful. But Johnny's blessings had withered. Vanessa was long gone, leaving him with debts and shame. His work performance declined. His health faltered under stress. And no matter how hard he tried, he could not rebuild what he had destroyed. One afternoon, he summoned the courage to visit Esther. She was in her shop, attending to customers, her children helping her. She looked radiant, her slim figure wrapped in a simple but elegant gown, her face calm and confident. Johnny hesitated at the doorway. His voice trembled. "Esther." She looked up, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, time froze. He saw no hatred, no anger, only distance. A distance that told him the chapter was closed. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears forming in his eyes. Esther nodded slowly. "I know. But sorry does not rebuild what has been destroyed." He bowed his head, unable to speak. She continued serving her customers, her children laughing beside her. Johnny turned and walked away, his shoulders heavy, his heart shattered. He knew then that he had lost her forever. The story of Johnny and Esther carried lessons for everyone who heard it. Lesson 1. Value character, not appearance. Esther was slim, yes, but she had the qualities that truly mattered: loyalty, wisdom, sacrifice, and strength. Johnny allowed shallow voices to blind him, and in the process, he lost the real treasure. Lesson 2. Don't let society poison your home. Social media, gossip, careless jokes, they can destroy a family if allowed. Johnny listened to outsiders and ignored the woman who had carried him through life's storms. Lesson 3. Betrayal has consequences. Johnny thought Esther would endure anything, but betrayal was the breaking point. He learned too late that trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. Lesson 4. A strong woman can rise from pain. Esther's strength became her crown. She proved that leaving betrayal does not mean failure, it can mean freedom, healing, and growth. Johnny's story ended in regret. Esther's story continued in strength. And now, dear listener, the question is yours to answer. White right pointing backhand index. If you were Esther, would you ever forgive Johnny if he came back begging? Or would you close that chapter forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.